It started with a tremor. Not in the earth, not in the storm that was gathering over the Atlantic outside my window, but right here, in my own skin. A shudder that began in the pit of my stomach and radiated outwards, a ghost of a touch I can still feel if I close my eyes. Even now, telling you this, my palms are slick with a nervous sweat. Because this isn't just a story. It's a confession. It's me, laying bare the most forbidden, shameful, and intensely desired moments of my life. And I have to wonder, have you ever held a secret so heavy it felt like it could shatter your bones? Before I pull back the curtain on that night, on all the nights that followed, I need you to be a part of this journey with me. If you feel yourself being drawn into this maze, make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications. Your presence here, listening without judgment, means more than you know. His name was Julian. My mother's husband. To the world, he was a pillar of quiet strength, a man whose presence filled a room without him ever needing to raise his voice. He had this aura of grounded charisma, a maturity that was magnetic. He was Eleanor's, my mother's, second husband, and for the first few years we lived under the same roof in this rambling old house in Newport. He and I were polite strangers. Ships passing in the grand, lonely hallways. He was always kind, but from a distance, his eyes holding a warmth that never quite reached me. Until that one, sweltering August evening when everything fractured. My mother was out, as she often was, at some charity gala or another, leaving the cavernous house to the echo of our two heartbeats. I had just showered after a long day, the humidity clinging to everything. I was in my room, standing before the antique vanity mirror, clad only in my lace underwear. The cool air from the open window felt like a blessing against my skin. I was reaching for a simple cotton dress, a shield against the oppressive heat, when a sound, no louder than a sigh, cut through the silence. The slow, deliberate creak of my bedroom door swinging inward. "Chloe," Julian's voice was a low baritone from the doorway. Calm. Steady. But it struck me like a physical blow. My head snapped towards the sound. My reflection did the same. And there he was. Leaning against the doorframe, one hand resting on the polished wood, as if he himself were debating his own intrusion. His eyes, they weren't shocked or apologetic. They were on me. An unwavering, analytical gaze that took in the curve of my spine, the line of my hip, the way my breath hitched in my throat. Time didn't just freeze. It became thick, heavy, like honey. Every particle of dust dancing in the sliver of light between us seemed to hang suspended. I didn't scream. I didn't reach for the dress. I simply stood there, transfixed, my own reflection a witness in the mirror. My heart wasn't just pounding, it was a wild, frantic drum against my ribs, a desperate Morse code I couldn't decipher. It was a battle of wills in the span of 5 seconds. His gaze was a question, and my stillness was an answer I didn't know I was giving. A wave of something hot and dizzying washed over me. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was awareness. A sudden, shocking awareness of my own body, and of him, not as my mother's husband, but as a man. "My apologies," he said finally, his voice a little rougher now. He dragged his eyes away from my body and met my gaze in the mirror. But the apology felt like a formality. There was a flicker of something else in their depths, hesitation, conflict, and a spark I couldn't, or wouldn't, name. The door was ajar. He pulled back, letting the door swing closed with a soft click that sounded as final as a gunshot in the silent house. But his presence lingered. The air was still charged with it, with the scent of his cologne, a subtle mix of sandalwood and something clean, like rain. It's fine," I managed to whisper to my reflection, my own voice a stranger's. But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. A line had been crossed, a silent acknowledgement had passed between us, and the foundations of my world had just been irrevocably shaken. That moment, that loaded gaze, burned itself into my memory. I told myself it was a mistake, an awkward accident we would both politely ignore. I was so wrong. A few days later, a wedding invitation lay on the polished mahogany table in the foyer. One of my mother's oldest friends, a woman on her 3rd trip down the aisle. Eleanor was in her element, a whirlwind of silk and excitement. She loved the performance of these things, the social dance. Loyalty, to her, was a concept best applied to brand names and hairstylists, not necessarily the man whose ring she wore. I had no desire to go, the thought of small talk and champagne making me feel tired already. But I knew Julian would be there. And that knowledge sent a thrill of something dark and exciting through me. We arrived at the opulent seaside venue together, stepping out of the car into the warm, salt-laced air. As the evening deepened, the reception hall glowed under the fairy lights strung between marble pillars. And I watched him. I tried not to, but my eyes kept finding him. Had his shoulders always been that broad? Had the lines around his eyes always crinkled in that devastatingly handsome way when he smiled? In his perfectly tailored dark suit, under the soft, forgiving lights, he was a study in effortless grace. "Stop it, Chloe," I muttered to myself, forcing my attention to the bland chicken entree. But it was useless. Then, the band struck up a slow, swaying melody. My mother, radiant and carefree, pulled Julian onto the dance floor. She laughed, a bright, tinkling sound, but her movements were clumsy, her attention already drifting to a table of her friends across the room. Halfway through the song, she did something that made my stomach clench. She spun away from Julian, grinning, and gestured toward me. "Julian, darling, you must dance with Chloe," she called out, her voice carrying over the music. "I simply have to go say hello to the Vanderbilts." And just like that, she abandoned him in the middle of the floor. A jolt, sharp and electric, shot through me. My heart began a frantic, panicked rhythm. I saw a flash of something, annoyance? Resignation, in Julian's eyes before it was masked by a polite smile. He turned to me and extended his hand. His eyes held mine, a silent, shared acknowledgement of my mother's flightiness. "Come on, Chloe," he said, his voice a low, inviting rumble. "Save me from my two left feet. Eleanor seems to think I'm a professional." His easy charm disarmed me. I couldn't refuse without causing a scene. Hesitantly, my hand trembling just slightly, I placed my fingers in his. "All right," I breathed. The moment his other hand settled on the small of my back, guiding me onto the dance floor, my breath caught. The warmth of his palm seemed to seep through the thin fabric of my dress, branding my skin. His clean, masculine scent enveloped me, a stark contrast to the cloying sweetness of the floral centerpieces. The world began to blur. There was the press of the crowd, the murmur of voices, the clinking of glasses, but it all became a distant hum. Can a single dance change the entire trajectory of your life? Have you ever been held by someone and felt, in that one moment, that you were both exactly where you were supposed to be, and in the most dangerous place on earth? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, if you're holding your breath with me through this, don't forget to hit that like button. Your support helps me continue to share these hidden truths. As we swayed to the music, his eyes never left mine. "I had no idea you were such a natural," he murmured, his voice a warm current that sent shivers down my spine. "Dancing with you, this is genuinely nice." I tried to look away, to break the intensity of his stare, but I couldn't. "I'm just following your lead," I said, but the tremor in my voice was a dead giveaway. A soft smile played on his lips. "Don't sell yourself short," he said, and I felt his fingers press just a fraction more firmly into my back, pulling me infinitesimally closer. "This isn't just following. We're communicating without words. Don't you feel that?" And I did. Oh God, I did. My body was moving in time with the music, but my mind and my heart were spinning in a wild, chaotic waltz of their own. Everything else faded into black and white. There was only Julian, the solid feel of him guiding me, the intensity in his dark eyes, and the storm of confusion and desire raging inside me. It was then, his lips close to my ear, that his voice dropped even lower, a private confession amidst the crowd. "I wanted to apologize," he began, "for the other day. In your room. My only intention was to let you know the door was open, but my timing was intrusive. It was disrespectful of your privacy." A flush of heat spread up my neck and across my cheeks. "It's okay," I said, maybe too quickly. "Really? It was nothing. These things happen." I wanted to defuse the tension, to pretend it hadn't affected me as profoundly as it had. He was silent for a beat, his steps never faltering. Still, he continued, his gaze unwavering. If I made you feel uncomfortable, I need you to know that was never my intent. My heart hammered against my ribs. What I wanted to say was, uncomfortable? No. It was like being struck by lightning. But what came out was a shaky, I wasn't uncomfortable. Truly, it's fine. The air between us grew thick with unspoken words. I was so intensely aware of his hand, of the sincerity in his eyes, of the strange, dangerous thrill coiling deep in my gut. The song began to fade, and as the final notes hung in the air, we slowed to a stop. "Thank you, Chloe," he said, his smile gentle, yet his eyes were still searching mine. "You are a remarkable dance partner." "You too," I whispered, my heart still a frantic bird in my chest. I pulled away, my skin instantly cold where he had been touching me, and retreated to the safety of my table. He watched me go, his gaze a tangible thing on my back, making it clear that whatever this was between us, it was far from over. If anything, the first note had just been played. When Eleanor finally floated back to our table, her face was flushed with wine and excitement. "You two looked so lovely out there," she exclaimed. "A perfect pair." Her casual compliment felt like a hot poker against my conscience. "It was fun," I mumbled, trying to arrange my face into a neutral expression. Julian simply inclined his head, a polite, unreadable smile on his lips. "Guess what?" Eleanor chirped, clapping her hands together. "The girls and I are heading to the Breakers for an after-party. Strictly girls only. Julian, you'll be a darling and get Chloe home safely, won't you?" He smiled that same, light smile. "Of course, Eleanor. Not a problem." And in that moment, a wave of something akin to anger washed over me. The unfairness of it. On a night that was supposed to be for them, she was casting him aside for her friends, treating him like a chauffeur. A pang of sympathy, sharp and unwelcome, pierced through my own turmoil. Eleanor, oblivious, was already air-kissing our shoulders goodbye, her priorities on full display. The drive home was wrapped in a silence so dense it felt like a physical entity. The car's engine was a low hum beneath the sound of my own ragged breathing. I stared out at the dark, rolling waves crashing against the shore, the mansions along the cliff walk lit up like distant constellations. I was desperate not to speak, terrified of what I might say, but it was Julian who broke the quiet. "She has a different set of priorities," he said, his voice flat and reflective, his eyes fixed on the winding road ahead. "I'm used to it. But still, it's surprising how thoughtless she can be. On a night like this, you expect your partner to want to be by your side." There was no self-pity in his tone, just a quiet statement of fact. But I could feel the disappointment radiating from him, a cold, lonely aura that filled the small space of the car. And it resonated with me, deeply. The idea of a man like Julian, so composed, so charismatic, feeling lonely, tugged at something inside me. "Yes," I found myself saying, my voice barely a whisper. "On nights like this, a little consideration, it's important." He nodded, a small, tight movement. "You're right. It is. But I suppose every relationship has its own rules." That brief exchange felt more intimate than the dance. It was a shared confidence, a moment where I felt like I could see the man behind the mask, and the bond between us tightened, silent and powerful. When we pulled into the long, gravel driveway of our house, he cut the engine and the silence rushed back in. He got out and opened my door, a gentlemanly gesture that felt achingly formal after the intimacy of our conversation. "Good night, Chloe," he said as I stepped past him towards the front door. But his tone held a note of hesitation, as if he weren't quite ready for the night to end. I walked down the hall toward my room, every nerve-ending tingling. I could feel him still standing by the door. Some strange, reckless impulse made me stop and turn. "Julian?" My voice was so quiet I wasn't sure he heard me. "Would you like some coffee? Or we could just talk for a while." I saw the conflict in his eyes. A flicker of desire, quickly extinguished by caution. He remembered the last time he'd been at my door. He thought I was just being polite, trying to show him I wasn't bothered by the accident. He gave me a small, sad smile and shook his head. "I should probably turn in. Thank you, though." I retreated to my room, my own invitation hanging awkwardly in the air. I sat on the edge of my bed, the events of the evening replaying on a loop. Eleanor's carelessness. Julian's quiet confession of loneliness. It echoed in my soul, affecting me more than I could admit. Why did his loneliness feel like my responsibility? Why couldn't I shake the memory of his gaze on my skin? Hours passed. The house was deathly quiet. Eleanor was still out. I lay in the dark, wrestling with my own conscience, when the sound came again. That soft, deliberate creak of my door. I froze, my body going rigid. I sat up, my heart leaping into my throat. And there he was again, a silhouette against the faint light of the hallway. This time, his expression was entirely different. It was a mask of raw determination, warring with a deep, profound conflict. "Julian," I breathed, shock robbing my voice of its strength. "What are you doing?" He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, plunging the room into near darkness, save for the moonlight painting silver stripes across the floor. He didn't move closer. He just stood there, a man on the edge of a precipice. "You were right, Chloe," he began, his voice low, laden with an emotion I couldn't place. "Eleanor, she's not fair to me. But tonight I don't give a damn what Eleanor is or isn't doing." He took a step closer, and then another. His gaze found mine in the gloom and locked on. "For a while now," he confessed, his voice steady but strained, "I felt something for you. Especially since that day, the accident. It's in my head, Chloe. I can't get it out." The air left my lungs. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't think. "Maybe I'll regret this tomorrow," he went on, the words tumbling out as if he could no longer contain them. "Maybe this is the biggest mistake of my life. But I cannot keep it inside. I think about you. Constantly." He paused, searching my face for a reaction in the dim light. "You understand me, Chloe. Maybe you don't even realize it, but you see me. In a way she never has." My heart was a runaway train. The weight of his confession, of the moment, was crushing. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat was closed. He saw my silence as rejection. His shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the sound fragile and broken. "I shouldn't have. I should go." He turned, his movements heavy with regret, and started for the door. I watched him go, each step a hammer blow to my own heart. He reached for the doorknob, his whole body tense with the effort of leaving, and in that instant, something inside me snapped. The fear, the guilt, the confusion, it all evaporated, replaced by a terrifying, exhilarating clarity. I could not let him walk out that door. "Julian," I called out. My voice was a whisper, but it sliced through the heavy silence. He stopped, his hand frozen on the brass knob. Slowly, he turned back to me. His eyes were a turbulent sea of longing and regret. We stood there for a heartbeat, two statues locked in a silent standoff. Then, with hands that trembled uncontrollably, I reached for the thin straps of my nightdress. I slid them from my shoulders, letting the silk whisper down my body to pool at my feet. The cool moonlight kissed my bare skin. His gaze followed the movement, his breath catching in an audible gasp. "I haven't forgotten either, Julian," I said, my voice shaking but resolute. "That day you walked in, everything changed for me, too. I've been trying to fight this, to push it down, to tell myself it's wrong." I took a deep, shuddering breath, the confession tearing from my soul. "But I can't. Because I feel it, too." His eyes, dark and intense, searched mine. I could see the same undeniable pull, the same magnetic force that had been humming between us for weeks. "Tonight," I said, stepping out of the puddle of silk, "I don't want to fight anymore. I don't know if this is right. I don't care. This is real." In two long strides, he closed the distance between us. His hands came up to cup my face, his touch both impossibly gentle and searingly hot, as if he were afraid I might shatter. Our eyes locked, and the world fell away. He leaned down, and his lips met mine. It wasn't a kiss, it was a collision. An unleashing of every forbidden thought, every stolen glance, every ounce of pent-up longing. It was desperate and hungry and deeply, achingly tender all at once. The thought of stopping, of pulling back, was an alien concept. It didn't exist in this universe we had just created. His hands moved from my face to my waist, pulling me against him until there was no space left between us, only the frantic beating of two hearts. I stepped backward, guided by his insistent pressure, until the backs of my legs hit the edge of the bed. I let myself fall back onto the cool sheets, pulling him down with me. The moonlight bathed the room in a dreamlike glow as his hands began to unbutton his shirt. Each movement was slow, deliberate, savoring the agonizing build of the moment. When the shirt fell away, his broad, sculpted chest was revealed, and his presence, his sheer masculinity, seemed to suck all the air from the room. He leaned over me, his shadow falling across my body, and we tumbled into a union where every boundary dissolved. It was a surrender. A complete and total capitulation to a force far greater than ourselves. I felt something vast and warm and overwhelming unfurl inside me. This was different from anything I had ever known. My hands clutched the pillows, my body arching to meet his, moving in a rhythm that felt both new and ancient. In the peak of it all, when the world shattered into a million points of light, he collapsed against me, his breathing ragged against my ear. "You are so special," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I always knew it. Now I understand." "So are you," I managed to say, a profound warmth spreading through my limbs. Afterward, as he lay beside me, I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady, reassuring drum of his heart returning to a normal rhythm. The reality of the moment, of his solid warmth against me, brought both a deep sense of peace and a terrifying turmoil. My fingers traced idle patterns on his skin. "You didn't come into my room by accident this time, Julian," I said softly, the words heavy with meaning. I tilted my head back to look at him, needing to see the truth in his eyes. He met my gaze, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "No, Chloe," he admitted. "Nothing about tonight was an accident. I had to know." I let my head fall back to his chest. "You are an incredible, magnetic man," I whispered. "But what happens now? What do we do after this?" "My mother, the world." He pulled me closer, his fingers tangling in my hair. His voice was a low, somber rumble against my ear. "I don't know, Chloe. I honestly don't know. The only thing I know for certain is that right here, right now, with you, this is the only thing that feels real." His words didn't calm the storm inside me, they only gave it a name. But his honesty was a balm. I closed my eyes, breathing in his scent, trying to anchor myself in the solid reality of his presence, even as the vast, uncertain ocean of our future loomed before us. All we could do was hold on to each other in the dark, and so we lay there, in the quiet after the storm. What happens now? I honestly don't know. But I'll be sharing the rest of this journey with you, right here. To make sure you don't miss a single moment of this complicated, forbidden story, hit that follow button and turn on all notifications. I need to know what you think. Was this a moment of true connection, or the beginning of a beautiful, devastating mistake? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one.